show has arrived. So hello and welcome back to my channel. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Saskia and I am going into my second year of psychology at the University of Southampton, which is scary. I am a child, I know, and we've got in-person lectures, so also no. So what I thought I'd do is go through some of my first class essays, because universities don't really teach you how to write an essay. We got shown like 2 examples of an essay, and I'm not gonna lie, there were supposedly like things that got a 68 and a 72, I think. I thought they were really bad. Like, I know that they were objectively good, but I didn't like them, didn't help me. So I do have a video on how I wrote my first ever first class essay, and I'm gonna basically do a video showing you what they look like, rather than just telling you, oh, I just did this, because that's not helpful. That video was so useless. So I've got like some really brief information written down, and then I'm literally just I'm not going to read you the whole thing because they are 1500 words, but I'm going to read the introduction, read a middle paragraph or 2, and then read the conclusion essentially and show you what it is. And then I'm sure somewhere I have an IB essay, and I'll basically just show you how it's different to an IB essay, because it is. I didn't do A-levels, but it's also very different to A-level essays, but my IB essay it's not similar to an A-level essay, but I'll do this, yeah, we'll do that stuff. So I thought I would talk through my highest scoring essays, because people are probably not going to want to see like an average essay. I mean, you might, but you also wouldn't understand it, because my kind of average scoring essay was on behavioural neuroscience, and it was about the fear conditioning, biological stuff, ventromedial prefrontal cortex. No, I don't understand that, so we're not going to do that. My voice is kind of croaky, I should probably drink something. But yeah, I'm going to go through 2 essays. Conveniently, my first and last essays of first year both got me the highest grade. So I got 78s in both of these. That's pretty good. I don't think I could have got any higher. That is the highest that anyone got in those essays. I think in any of the essays. I don't think you can. Like, basically our uni puts out like a score that says like the lowest score, highest score, standard deviation, and the mean or something. And nowhere in first year have I seen above a 78 in the in an actual essay. So I don't know how you get above a 78. If anyone knows, tell me. Does that just happen when you go into second year? They're like, oh, she's in second year now. Her essay that would have been a 78 in first year is now an 80 something. Like, I'm not sure how that works. So yeah, I have 2 essays. One of them was the first ever essay I wrote, one of them was the last ever essay I wrote. I will go through the first one first. The first one I had more guidance on, but still wasn't really guidance. So the first one we wrote a draft for. We then submitted our draft and we got feedback. Not gonna lie, my essay didn't really change from the feedback. The feedback wasn't the most useful. It's mostly just things like, I don't like this, or like, move this down. Like, it's very little, not much changed essentially between my draft and my official essay, so I'm just really smart on my own. But yeah, so my first essay, both of these were around 1500 words. My first essay was on positive self-statements. It was 1490 words and it had 16 references. I seem to like 16 references because my next essay also had 16. I just thought I'd share that because I don't know, some people kind of get overwhelmed and they're like, oh god, I'm not using enough, or I'm using too many. I don't know if 16 is a lot. I don't know, to me 16 seems quite a lot. But I know for a lot of my references, I use them for literally one statement. Like, some of them I use for an entire paragraph, or as like the entire overarching theme. And then some of them are literally for one definition in the beginning. Like, this essay had a lot of definitions in it because I don't really know what to do. So I just started defining things. So I have a lot of references and citations from just for one definition essentially. This essay was on, are positive self-statements effective in boosting mood and self-esteem? Yes, they are. If you were wondering, not that you really were. But I honestly didn't know how to write this essay. When you do an A-level essay or an IB essay, you kind of just define everything first. That's what I went for. That did tend to work. So my first essay is literally my first paragraph is just definitions Like, what is self-statements? What are self-statements? What's self-esteem? What's mood? How can a self-statement boost mood and self-esteem? And we were looking at one overarching paper. So anytime I mention Wood et al., that was our overarching paper that we were kind of using. So sometimes you'll have one paper that's kind of the main focus of your essay, and you're using other papers to back up or go against your main paper, if that makes sense. So I don't really know what I'm going to do. I think I'm just going to read through this. So I'll either put a picture up like here, or I'll put myself in a corner and I'll put it on the screen. I don't really know, but I'm going to just read you the first paragraph and kind of talk you through it. So, attracting a great deal of attention in the field of social psychology, self-concept is an individual's perception of themselves, something which is formed through experiences and interpretations of the environment. Citation. As a central trait, self-esteem is one of the most important aspects of self-concept, citation, and can therefore greatly influence it. Wood et al. 2009 describes self-esteem as the overall assessment of the value of one's self or self-worth. This can be boosted in several ways. However, Philpott and Bamberg, 1996, suggested that positive self-statements may also be able to increase the self-esteem of individuals. So, that is literally just definitions. But it's definitions flowing into one another. Like, one of the things that I got in my feedback was, first of all, that my introduction was a bit shit. But like, the first sentence of my introduction didn't need to be there. I always want to make my first sentence kind of seem funky, seem a bit nice. But it does end up that my first sentence is always pretty much useless. Like, your first sentence doesn't have to be beautiful. So where's my feedback? Like, my comment for the introduction, first sentence, this isn't necessary. The next sentence is a perfectly reasonable starting point. You don't really need a nice fancy sentence. My second point was then, I like how you're setting these up in a nice progression. Yeah, so like, they're flowing in order. It's not just me listing self-esteem is this, self-concept is this, self-identity is this. It's not just me listing things. Well, it's kind of listing, but in a nice way. Like, you don't want to just stream off things. You want to find how everything links. What I always do is I literally just grab like a piece of paper and just like write self-esteem and like draw arrows and link everything together to see how I want it to go together. I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't really know how this video is going to work. I'm sure most people just want to look through my essay, so I will just kind of keep putting it up. Let's read another paragraph. Let's read my second paragraph, because that is kind of almost following on from my introduction. Your paragraphs also don't have to be that big. Like, they don't have to be chunky babies. So where's my second thing? So I've introduced self-esteem. My next thing was, what the hell is self-talk? The hell is a positive self-statement? So self-talk is a form of intervention that has recently been investigated by researchers in order to assess their effects on an individual's self-esteem. Theodorakis et al. Defined this as what individuals say to themselves, either overtly or covertly. Positive self-statements are a variation of self-talk that have the possibility to affect an individual's mood, and there are two types of these: stable and unstable, each of which can have varying effects. Citation. Stable positive self-statements are general statements about the individual. These are likely to affect many outcomes compared to unstable positive self-statements, which are more specific to situations and therefore unlikely to affect many outcomes. Citation. So that one is almost more just listing. So as much as I did just say don't list off definitions, if they kind of link together, you can just list them off. Like, obviously in a nice way, linking them together, find a nice paper that talks about all of them so you don't have to use like 20 citations to talk about the same thing. So then what you want to do is look at the evidence. So I've introduced what is a positive self-statement. My question is, are they effective in boosting your mood and self-esteem? So, are they? Find out. Go and do your research. Google your questions. Shove it into Google Scholar. Shove it into just Google and then click on articles, journals, something like that. Click on most of them, read the abstract, and you can find out what you want to know. Then what you basically just want to do is talk about things. Just talk about different papers. So I think I talked about kind of 4 main papers or something like that. So I was like, oh, they can affect people differently. Here is one study that shows that they might be useful. Then I talked about the main study, how it did boost your self-esteem. But then I was like, alternatively, if you have these positive self-statements, you're going to compare that feedback with other things. Like, a lot of my things are, so, in line with this explanation. Someone else supported that with this evidence. Alternatively, this theory states this. Similarly, this theory states this. Someone repeated that study. That's something I think was actually quite good, is the main paper that we had done, someone replicated that completely. Perfect. External reliability. Include repeats. It's great stuff. Really think it was a good idea. Like, as much as... So when you do an A-level essay, you have to just shove in your crappy AO3 points. Like, you don't want to just be saying, oh, they did this study, but this has low external reliability. You need to... Why is that even relevant? Like, I only included the replicated study because it improves the reliability of my argument, which means that my argument is better. I wasn't going to say, oh, but it was a lab experiment. Like, I could have mentioned, oh, but you don't really know how it would affect real life. I wouldn't mention that till the conclusion, when I'd say, even though we've got a lot of evidence, we're not quite sure how it's going to affect real life because a lot of the studies are very artificial. Something like that. Like, you don't want to do kind of point, study generic evaluative point. Like, your evaluative points have to mean something. I literally didn't mention that many evaluative points. I mentioned external reliability. I think I mentioned individual differences. Oh, history effect. Temporal validity. And I then mentioned like an issue with the paper. Like, not necessarily an issue with the study, but an issue with the paper. Like, the paper didn't explain concepts very well. Definitions were a bit wishy-washy. Anything along those lines. Then, I quite like this. In a study examining the effect of modes of delivery and positive self-statements, Jung and Lund's findings echoed those of Wood et al. Echoed. Great. It's basically just saying, yeah, this supports my study, but echoed. I just think that's a bit nicer. You can then also talk about like samples, cultural differences. Don't say like, oh, it's not representative. But like, I was then like, they looked at cultural differences. We had a Hong Kong Chinese sample versus an American sample. So, we're looking at this differences. Like, I then literally I'm going to be scrolling through it on the screen, but I just went through different things, different concepts, different ideas. I kind of did, each paragraph was a study. So, Philpott and Bamberg, entire paragraph about them. Hames, entire paragraph about them, but linking it to the next paragraph. So Hames, I don't know what Hames did. Hames did something about mood, right? We're talking about that. My last sentence in Hames is something about low self-esteem. But then another study that did actually improve self-esteem or something like that was Philpott and Bamberg. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Then, because I just mentioned like depression in my Philpott and Bamberg, oh, cognitive behavioural therapy. Then I will read my conclusion. My conclusion, I was told, was a bit long, but was a nice summary of everything. I think it was too much of a summary. As in, I think I just kind of literally just one sentence per paragraph I did. I didn't like it, but it kind of made sense. So my kind of final paragraph was, despite Wood et al. 2009 suggesting that positive self-statements may have detrimental effects for individuals with low self-esteem, a replication by Flynn and Bordereri did not report the same findings. So you've got, first idea, oh, is it very good though? Although the positive self-statements didn't have an adverse effect on low self-esteem, they were ineffective in boosting mood or self-esteem, answering my question. They suck. But conversely, studies by blank and blank found that they led to higher self-esteem. Since the mechanism in which these are delivered is important, we need to consider that with their effectiveness. Because there is contrasting evidence for the effects of positive self-statements, we need to do further research. So I kind of reached a conclusion, but I also didn't, because I am a child. I was 18 when I wrote this. I was a young girl. I'm now 19. You're not expected to know the answer to these questions either. Like, your essay it has to reach a conclusion, but it doesn't have to reach like a conclusion. Like, my conclusions are pretty much always, yes, there is an effect, but we don't know enough, or we could do more research on this, because I'm a child. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a researcher. I don't know. I don't know the answer, you know? So that was my first essay. You know, it was very clearly a first essay, I think. The introduction was just kind of listing off. The conclusion was just kind of literally summarising exactly what I'd been through. It was very different to my IB essays, but it was still very sixth form, but just fancy language. I've always been good at being very articulate. I'm very articulate when I speak. I'm very articulate when I write. I like to use words like subsequently, conversely, you know, echo. They're not necessarily fancy, but they just make your work seem a bit nicer. So that was my first essay. In my opinion, you can kind of tell it's a first essay. The feedback that I then got on that essay was just literally just, this is nice, really nice. I didn't really get told how to make it better. I got told that something that was good was that I didn't use my own thoughts. I think that's pretty, yeah. It's not about thinking for yourself. It's about what do other people think. And that's important. Like, I got told, like, I think I had a good grasp of the literature, something like that. And I didn't rely too much on my own information, which is what I should be doing at this stage, which does kind of confuse me. Like, in second year, am I supposed to get my own opinions? When do I have opinions? Do I need opinions? I don't think I do need opinions. But, like, yeah, I didn't really get much feedback that said how to make it better. But my feedback was just kind of, this is good. So yeah, I don't really know. Could that have been a better essay? Yeah, sure. I think I got, like, if I had more words, I could have expanded something, but I did not have more words. So, yeah, but at least I got feedback. The next essay that we're going to look at, I didn't get feedback. That was really good. Didn't get any feedback. We got general feedback for, like, the whole cohort, but I'm not going to lie, I don't care what the cohort did. I want my feedback. Like, we got, like, a general thing that was like, oh, definitions were good, you looked at the psychosocial model, that kind of thing, but, like, no. So our next one that got me a 78 was Psychology of Mental Health. Discuss the impact of stigma on a person experiencing mental health problems and one way this can be addressed, referring to academic evidence in your answer. So this one we had 48 hours for. I did this in like 24 hours, not even 24 hours, I did like 4 hours and I handed it in. I did vlog it in the cards. Will it be in the cards? I don't know. But the other one I had like months to do, weeks, months, something. This was in 24 hours, so I'm quite proud of this. I actually did really like this essay. I did feel really proud of it when I wrote it. And this one also had 16 references and it was 1,498 words. So I'm always in the 1,490 out of 1,500 because if I can use the words, I'm going to use them. You know, 1,498 is cutting it a bit fine, but try and stop me. So I'll read my first paragraph. I don't remember this. The other one was literally 9 months ago. This was only like 2 months ago. I don't bloody know what I said. So, stigma is a powerful social process that acts as one of the key deterrents to help seeking for individuals with mental health problems. Citation. It can be categorised into public and self-stigma, both of which are equally detrimental to individuals suffering with mental health problems. Public stigma is the reaction of the general population. The general population with mental illnesses, if this is internalised by the sufferer, it becomes self-stigma. Citation, if an individual experiences any of these stigmas, it can undermine their diagnosis, treatment and health outcomes. Citation, resulting in them being unable to fully recover or engage in treatment. Therefore, addressing stigma is vital to ensure that individuals experiencing mental health problems are able to recover or manage their illness in a safe and effective environment. So again, I'm just kind of listing off definitions. As much as I'm listing them off though, I'm linking them together. I've said this is what stigma is. Oh, there's 2 types. These are the 2 types. Why is that an issue? Because I'm looking at the impact of stigma, I basically need to see what's the general impact. I finish with, you know, it can undermine diagnosis. That's my general impact, done. And then therefore, you know, we need to address this, kind of like working it forwards, if that makes sense. Like, I then just moved on to, this was definitely less planned. I didn't know what I was doing. There was no plan. I googled stigma, I googled effects of stigma on, were we looking at depression? It was just mental health problems. I looked at like effects of stigma on different health problems and I just bloody went for it. So, you know, in the Western world, started with that, talk about different Western opinions, different types of stigma, why stigma happens. And I only did that for one paragraph. No one cares. That's not the point of my essay. Like, focus on the point of your essay. My point was the impact. So I did one paragraph of kind of what the hell is stigma? How do we get stigma? And then I looked at how is that going to impact someone? So, you know, experiencing a mental health problem will often lead to individuals seeking care, straightforward. However, if care seeking results in their problem being labelled as a psychiatric illness, this may be a deterrent in them continuing treatment, as it may be off-putting. Once they have this label, it will act as a signalling moment in which they will abandon care seeking in order to avoid the stigma associated with it. Citation. I quite like that sentence. Therefore, people might not move forwards if they have stigma, la 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 la. However, if they then internalise this, we've got the self-stigma. Like, I'm always trying to refer back to the things I defined. There's no point defining your words in your introduction if you're not going to talk about them and use them. Like, everything I tried to mention, well, I'm hoping, I'm only on paragraph 2 at this point, I tried to include a link back to the different type of stigma that it was and the impact. So we've talked about different types of stigma. We've talked about, you know, if you're being labelled, you're going to go from public stigma to self-stigma, and that's going to stop you from accessing care. Simple kind of statement. It's nothing fancy. You don't want to start off with anything too intense. You just want the basic content essentially done and dusted and out of the way. Then also talk about other things. So I was supposed to be just looking at stigma, but here's another thing I did. You know, despite fewer than half of all individuals living with a diagnosable health problem seeking treatment, among those who do, 20% discontinue treatment prematurely. Although this can be attributed to financial, social, or physical barriers to treatment, mental health stigma has has emerged to be one of the most significant obstacles in mental health over the past decade. So I've not just said that stigma is an issue. Like, we know stigma is an issue, but I'm not trying to make it seem like the only issue. Like, it's good to mention counter arguments or other things that can be a factor. So I'm not talking about them because that's not the point of my essay, but I've mentioned them so the examiner knows I'm aware that they exist, if that makes sense. What else can we got? Oh, I've then got how it's not just, you know, you're not going to have stigma just on the patient, it will be on the provider itself. So, you know, mental health problems. Service users have reported that mental health professionals were a source of their stigma. If they focus solely on the illness, people might not want to seek care. We've then got media presentation. So I've talked about self-stigma, public stigma, stigma from mental health professionals, and then I've moved on to media stigma. So I'm not trying to kind of put it all together and like waffle it around. Split things up. Split your essay up into sections. I don't use headings. I think I got slated for this at one point for not using headings. Not by an examiner, by a student who was like, I don't like that you don't use headings. I don't use headings and I still get 78. Like, the one essay I think I use headings in, I got a 65. Correlation. Not causation, but I'm taking it as correlation and causation. Psychology. So, you know, then I'm talking about different types of stigmas and then how to reduce stigma. I don't think we explicitly had to talk about how to reduce stigma, but in my head it makes sense. Why would I mention stigma if I'm not going to talk about how we can get rid of it? And let me read my closing paragraph. I love the word despite, clearly. So despite stigma having many negative impacts on individuals with mental health problems, interventions have been shown to be effective in reducing the effects to some extent, and therefore should be implemented where possible to ensure that individuals with mental health problems have minimal barriers to treatments. Since stigma can create many barriers to seeking or completing mental health treatments, providing successful educational interventions would not only help to ensure that those already suffering with mental health problems were able to complete their courses of treatments, but also individuals who develop such problems would have less barriers to entering treatments. Having minimal barriers to entering and completing treatments would also have a positive effect on mental health professionals, as they would be able to complete treatments over one course of sessions, meaning that time and resources would not be wasted on re-referrals to services if they were to prematurely exit treatment again due to stigma. I don't really like that conclusion. It doesn't feel to me like I've concluded. Oh no, I did have to look at one way that stigma could be addressed. So I did answer my question, but I don't really know. I feel like this has been a really long video of me just, first of all, not being able to bloody talk, not being able to speak my essays because I don't speak. I don't do that, it's not for me. But yeah, I will potentially show you an essay if I've got one. If I've got one, it was a 19 out of 22, and A-level students, come at me, I dare you. because that is hard to get. A-level students get like 14 out of 16 on the reg, and that's fine. Congrats, you're doing great. IB students, you're probably going to get like 16 out of 22 in your exam. I, as the self-proclaimed but also objectively best student in the class, I was getting 15, 16 in the exam. When I wasn't in the exam, I could do a 13 if I tried really hard. The highest I ever got was 21. That happened once, never again. You're not going to do well in an IB essay. It's objectively harder. I'm just, you know, come at me, please. Don't come at me. It's harder. I'll put my essay on the screen if I've got it. It kind of looks a bit different because same with A-level essays, you kind of introduce your evidence and then you go and evaluate it. No. In a university essay, you don't do, here is my study, here is what's wrong with it. You kind of do, here is my study, oh, but it was a bit, you know, it's missing another sample. So contrast that with my diverse sample of my, you know, I had the Americans in, you know, white Americans, then I had Hong Kong Chinese sample to help fix that issue. Like what I did is find an issue with your one paper, find a paper that fixes that issue, kapoo, pair them together. Like you don't want to kind of have your content split into your AO1 and your AO3 or your knowledge and your evaluation. You need to interlink it. It needs to be a beautiful relationship between the two. Your introduction and conclusion are kind of the same as A-level. They're just a bit fancier, but your main bulk of your essay needs to be more beautiful. It needs to be much prettier. It needs to look nicer. It needs to flow better. So as much as I haven't done anything in this video to help you, I've just shown you my essays. And I do vlog my exams. Will I vlog them when we do them in person? No. But if I do write any more essays, which I literally will, I'm doing a psychology degree, I will film those again. In the vlogs I do sometimes like show you my process. I'll try and maybe focus more on the process of actually how I write an essay, but they normally kind of stress me out. But yeah, I don't want to, this is already like 40 minutes of filming and I've not said anything helpful, but I will just leave, you know, you could just pause it and read through my essays if you want to, have a look at that kind of thing. Don't plagiarise them, it will come up as plagiarism, and don't steal my content because it's a bit rude. But thank you for watching, hope it was helpful in some way, and Maribel says you got this. Peace.